Good morning, everyone. My name is Georgina Emerson, and I'm going to walk you through a lesson that I made with my colleague and my friend, Linda Van Kesteren. We've called it Carelessness to Constriction, Choreography for Reading Comprehension. It's a transdisciplinary collaboration that was a whole lot of fun to do. So the theme that inspired this lesson was the theme of carelessness. Why do some people get to be careless while others do not? And I was teaching this in my Global Feminisms course a couple of years ago now, when I thought that it would be really cool to approach carelessness through not just a discussion, but feeling it in your body. How can you be careless with your body, and why do some people get to be careless with their bodies and some people don't? And that can be everything from appearance to how you hold your body. And then I started thinking, oh, this seems like something that we could use movement for. And that, I don't even know if I thought about it that much on my own or if I started talking to Linda earlier, because from then on out, we were really collaborating together. And we figured out that something that our students needed to sort of build up their empathy and also build up some of their reading comprehension skills was to take on what they were reading and not just analyze it and think about it and write about it, but rather to try to feel it and try to feel it in their bodies. So that's where this lesson came from. And it revolves around some passages in Azar Nafisi's Reading Lolita and Tehran. Okay, so what are our goals for this lesson? Our goals are to increase empathy by more deeply understanding the lived experiences of others, to show teachers to use that they can use movement to encourage students to engage more deeply with what they read, and also to model cross-collaboration across different departments. In this case, social studies, or I think technically I was always in the history department, but social studies and dance. English and history sometimes go together like a horse and carriage, math and science. But I think as we move away from siloing our understanding in these different ways towards a greater, more comprehensive understanding of things, we have to start thinking about really funky ways to collaborate. So this is dance and social studies, but it could have been something else, and we need to start kind of mixing it up a little bit more, I think. So what are we going to do? We're going to physicalize experiences for students, and we're going to do close textual readings followed by sensorial experience. This was all done in a remote way. I currently live in Austin, Texas. Linda lives in New York City, which is where we met and worked together. And we had a former student and current Teach About Women intern of ours, Paloma Stafford, come in for the lesson. And she's in upstate New York, I think. So it's also a really nice example of how to teach movement and work together in this sort of remote and locked down world that we are currently living in late 2020 and early 2021. So our agenda, let's think a little bit about reading and empathy, get into that mindset. Then I will read aloud a passage from Reading Lolita in Tehran by Azar Nafisi, describing her female student's walk home in 1990s Tehran. Then we're going to move right into our exercises, our dance choreography, if you will. Constraining the body, exercise 1. Constraining movement, exercise 2. And constraining space, exercise 3. Then tying it all together into a choreograph sequence. Those 4 things are what, including 5 things, because I read aloud the passage to Linda and Paloma when we worked together. And then we did the exercises that are very much so by Linda's design. I had nothing to do with them. I was a joyful participant. I never thought that I would do modern dance as part of Teach About Women, but here we are. And then finally, I'll share some concluding thoughts with you. And as a bonus at the end, I'm going to read another passage from Reading Lolita in Tehran that I think speaks to the theme of carelessness and asks, evokes the question of, when does carelessness become cruelty? Which was also something that with my high school students we discussed a lot. Okay, So let's get ourselves into this mindset. Let's think a little bit about reading and empathy. This is a quite famous passage from Rudine Sims Bishop, her work Windows, Mirrors, and Sliding Doors from 1990, but it's quoted all over the place. It's hard to find like the original book. And she's speaking very much so about the Black American experience in this passage, and I want to honor that because so often in equity work, teachers can take things that are supposed to be about the Black American experience and sort of make them about everything and anything. And while I'm recognizing that I'm kind of doing that, I also I want to say that that Rudine Sims Bishop's work on empathy was very much so rooted in the fight for respect, equity, and safety of Black Americans. So here's what she says. Books are sometimes windows, offering views of worlds that may be real or imagined, familiar or strange. These windows are also sliding glass doors, and readers have only to walk through in imagination to become part of whatever world has been created and recreated by the author. When lighting conditions are just right, however, a window can also be a mirror. Literature transforms human experience and reflects it back to us. And in that reflection, we can see our own lives and experiences as part of the larger human experience. Reading then becomes a means of self-affirmation, and readers often seek their mirrors in books. So often right now, we speak about building empathy in our students, and that involves, to an extent, being able to see yourself in the other. But I think, too, it involves the limitations of empathy. What's the difference between hearing and witnessing someone's experience and trying to understand it and understanding it to a certain extent versus sort of taking it as your own? And I think that's always a fine line to walk when you're asking students to step into a certain feeling that they read about. And I think that's a limitation of this exercise, right? This is a way to deepen our sense of witnessing, but not to appropriate the experiences of the women that Nafisi writes about. So reading Lolita in Tehran by Azar Nafisi. This was a book that I wanted, that I taught for several years in my global feminisms course at the Hewitt School. It's a book about reading. So it's a book about reading as a way to deepen experience and understanding. So I wanted students to start questioning the messages, the underlying and not so underlying messages in literature and movies and commercials and websites where they buy clothes. And I thought that this book talks through that. She really writes through this. Although she's always there, she's reading and enjoying these books with her small book club. She's also always analyzing them, and I think it's a great model for literary analysis and what I think can lead you to a deeper, richer life by reading deeply, and it can help you experience the world more deeply. But that's sort of like Georgina's agenda, and that doesn't necessarily, not everyone agrees, and that doesn't really matter for this. In fact, this is about moving in order to experience the world more deeply. It's a memoir of the gradual constriction of women's and everyone's freedoms under the Islamic Republic of Iran. So after the Iranian Revolution in 1979 and the rise of the Ayatollah, Iran changed in many, many ways, including for Iranian women, what had been perhaps a freer and more Western model of gender equity was transformed, and women were suddenly required to wear headscarves, limited in what jobs they could have. Now, they were allowed the vote. It's not sort of a universal shutting down of every kind of freedom. And I want to emphasize that Nafisi's experiences of this and her writing about this are one of many perspectives on the process of this sort of Islamicization, or kind of the process by which Iran became a fundamentalist republic. It's not necessarily a problem that it's Islamic, but perhaps a problem that it's fundamentalist. And many scholars, including Leila Abu Lagud, whose work is the focus of the Gender Equity Victims and Heroes Unit, find Nafisi's emphasis on Western literature as kind of a salutary or cure-all in an increasingly fundamentalist Islamic climate to be misleading, and to be Western-centric and Eurocentric. And ultimately, I think many scholars would criticize Nafisi for having kind of a colonizing effect, or kind of encouraging a colonizing effect. But life is complicated. And I think that Nafisi's work does a lot of things really, really well. And that's why I've chosen it. Okay, so I'm going to read aloud a passage for you. I have the pictures here in the presentation. So you can read along with me, or you can just sort of quietly listen. And then I'm not going to ask you to comment on it, or I'm not going to share any comments on it, because I want you to think about how you can encourage your students to engage with the written word, not just with more words, but through movement, and to celebrate student engagement on a different level, which is the level of the body. And I think you'll find that while so many of us, including myself, are so comfortable with words and with writing down our thoughts and sharing claims and thesis statements, it can be less comfortable for some students, and then far, far more comfortable for other students to share their responses through the body and through movement. So this offers a kind of differentiation that I think is really cool. Okay, let me get out my book. Just need to take a sip of water. So in my edition, which is a paperback, I think from 2006, this begins on page 26. So towards the beginning, when Nafisi is telling us about her world. How can I create this other world outside the room? I have no choice but to appeal once again to your imagination. Let's imagine one of the girls, say Sanaz, leaving my house, and let us follow her from there to her final destination. She says her goodbyes and puts on her black robe and scarf over her orange shirt and jeans, coiling her scarf around her neck to cover her huge gold earrings. She directs wayward strands of hair under the scarf, puts her notes into her large bag, straps it on over her shoulder, and walks out into the hall. She pauses a moment on the top of the stairs to put on thin, lacy black gloves to hide her nail polish. We follow Sanaz down the stairs, out the door and into the street. You might notice that her gait and her gestures have changed. It is in her best interest not to be seen, to be heard, or noticed. She doesn't walk upright, but bends her head towards the ground and doesn't look at passers-by. She walks quickly with a sense of determination. The streets of Tehran and other Iranian cities are patrolled by militia who ride in white Toyota patrols. 4 gun-carrying men and women, sometimes followed by a minibus. They are called the Blood of God. They patrol the streets to make sure that women like Sanaz wear their veils properly, do not wear makeup, do not walk in public with men who are not their fathers, brothers, or husbands. She will pass slogans on the walls, quotations from Khomeini and a group called the Party of God. Men who wear ties are U.S. lackeys. Veiling is a woman's protection. Beside the slogan is a charcoal drawing of a woman. Her face is featureless and framed by a dark chador. My sister, guard your veil. My brother, guard your eyes. If she gets on a bus, the seating is segregated. She must enter through the rear door and sit in the back seats allocated to women. Yet in taxis, which accept as many as 5 passengers, men and women are squeezed together like sardines, as the saying goes. And the same goes with minibuses, where so many of my students complain of being harassed by bearded and God-fearing men. You might well ask, what is Sanaz thinking as she walks through the streets of Tehran? How much does this experience affect her? Most probably, she tries to distance her mind as much as possible from her surroundings. Perhaps she is thinking of her brother or of her distant boyfriend and the time when she will meet up with him in Turkey. Does she compare her own situation with her mother's when she was the same age? Is she angry that women of her mother's generation could walk the streets freely, enjoy the company of the opposite sex, join the police force, become pilots, live under laws that were among the most progressive in the world regarding women? Does she feel humiliated by the new laws, by the fact that after the revolution, the age of marriage was lowered from 18 to 9, that stoning became once again the punishment for adultery and prostitution? In the course of nearly 2 decades, the streets have been turned into a war zone where young women who disobey the rules are hurled into patrol cars, taken to jail, flogged, fined, forced to wash the toilets, and humiliated as soon as they leave. And as soon as they leave, they go back and do the same thing. Is she aware, Sanaz, of her own power? Does she realize how dangerous she can be when her every stray gesture is a disturbance to public safety? Does she think how vulnerable the Revolutionary Guards are, who for over 18 years have patrolled the streets of Tehran and have had to endure young women like herself and those of her generation, walking, talking, showing a strand of hair just to remind them that they are not converted? We have reached Sanaz's house, where we will leave her on the doorstep, perhaps to confront her brother on the other side and to think in her heart of her boyfriend. These girls, my girls, have both a real history and a fabricated one. Although they come from very different backgrounds, the regime that ruled them tried to take their personal identities and histories irrelevant. Excuse me, I'm going to read that again. Although they came from different backgrounds, the regime that ruled them tried to make their personal identities and histories irrelevant. They were never free of the regime's definition of them as Muslim women. Whoever they were, and it was not really important what religion we belonged to, whether we wished to wear the veil or not, whether we observed certain religious norms or not. We had become the figment of someone else's dream. A stern Ayatollah, a self-proclaimed philosopher king, had come to rule our land. He had come in the name of a past that he claimed had been stolen from him. And now he wanted to recreate us in the image of that illusory past. Was it any consolation, and did we even wish to remember that what he did to us was what we allowed him to do? Okay, and now we'll move in to the movement exercises.
Okay, so hi everybody. So what we're going to start with today is beginning to work with our first exercise, which is constraints within the body, feeling what those constraints are like. So we're going to start by putting our sweatshirt on and throwing our hood up over our head. And it might help for you to tie the strings underneath just to make it feel a little bit tight, just to help you with this, but don't feel like you have to. Okay, so here we are. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to work with movements to try to get your sweatshirt hood off of your head. So take a few minutes and try to find your way to get that hood off of your head. And just nice, easy movements. Good. So once you've worked with that, try to settle into 2 specific movements, very clear, on trying to get that hood off your head. Here we go. And once you've found those two movements, repeat them in order. Your first one, your second one. First one, second one. Good. So try to remember those two moves. So here's move one and move two. Good. Now we're going to take the sweatshirt off, remove it from your body. Great. And this time we're going to take our sweatshirt and we're going to turn it backwards. And we're going to have our sleeves out like so. You're going to take your sweatshirt and put it around your waist. And if you have a back to your chair, you're going to bring the arms around to the back, the sleeves, so that they're in the back of your chair. If not, you can do it with a stool and just bring the sleeves so that they're joining. And make sure your hands are kind of underneath that hole that you created. And then just hang on to the sleeves. So something like this, so that you really can't move at all. And then start trying to work your way with your body out of that space. Take a few minutes and play with that movement. Good. And once you've found what that basically feels like, pick two moves and repeat them. Good. Okay, so that is going to be your 3 and your 4. So we have our 3 move, our 3rd move, and our 4th move. Excellent. So remember, we have our 1, 2. So let's just go over that for a minute. 1, 2. Now we're going to add on 3 and 4. Good. Just repeat that again so you make sure you know it. 1,
4.
2, 3, 4. Good. Okay. So let your arms go. Shake your hands out and your shoulders a little because that's kind of confining.
I know. Oh, stiff.
Right. Exactly what we're talking about. We're going to put it, you can choose which way you want to do this, but basically we're going to put it on our lap and then we're going to tie the ends underneath the chair and constrain your body. So you can, grab the other ends and, underneath the chair and bring it up and through on the other side, whatever works for you. So that basically you've trapped your legs underneath this sweatshirt. So you can't really get out because the sweatshirt's constraining you. Okay, so again, you're going to this time try to get out of the chair, either by using your thighs or by actually trying to stand up with the resistance of this sweatshirt. Spend a few minutes to feel what that's like.
One.
Good. And then when you find something that works for you, make those 2 defined movements. And those will be 5 and 6 in our phrase. So 5, 6. Repeating again, 5, 6. Excellent. So take the sweatshirt and put it away from you. And we're going to make a phrase out of those 3 different experiences. So we start with our head, which would be 1 and 2. And then the next move, which is when we have the sweatshirt around our waist, 3, 4. And this time around our thighs, 5, 6. Good. So using what we call 2 counts for each movement, the 1, 2, 2, 2, 3, 2, we're going to go through all 6 movements. Ready, and 1, 2, 2, 2, 3, 2, 4, 2, 5, 2, 6, 2. Great. So hang on to that phrase because we're going to come back and use it again later. But that is the end of our first exercise. Okay, so hi everybody. So what we're going to start with today is beginning to work with our first exercise, which is constraints within the body, feeling what those constraints are like. So we're going to start by putting our sweatshirt on and throwing our hood up over our head. And it might help for you to tie the strings underneath just to make it feel a little bit tight, just to help you with this, but don't feel like you have to. Okay, so here we are. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to work with movements to try to get your sweatshirt hood off of your head. So take a few minutes and try to find your way to get that hood off of your head. And just nice, easy movements. Good. So once you've worked with that, try to settle into two specific movements, very clear on trying to get that hood off your head. Here we go. And once you've found those two movements, repeat them in order. Your first one, your second one. First one, second one. Good. So try to remember those two moves. So here's move one and move two. Good. Now we're going to take the sweatshirt off, remove it from your body. Great. And this time we're going to take our sweatshirt and we're going to turn it backwards. And we're going to have our sleeves out like so. You're going to take your sweatshirt and put it around your waist. And if you have a back to your chair, you're going to bring the arms around to the back, the sleeves, so that they're in the back of your chair. If not, you can do it with a stool and just bring the sleeves so that they're joining. And make sure your hands are kind of underneath that hole that you created. And then just hang on to the sleeves. So something like this, so that you really can't move at all. And then start trying to work your way with your body out of that space. Take a few minutes and play with that movement. Good. And once you've found what that basically feels like, pick two moves and repeat them. Good. Okay, so that is going to be your 3 and your 4. So we have our 3 move, our 3rd move, and our 4th move. Excellent. So remember, we have our 1, 2. So let's just go over that for a minute. 1, 2. And now we're going to add on 3 and 4. Good. Just repeat that again so you make sure you know it.
3,
1,
4.
2, 3, 4. Good. Okay. So let your arms go. Shake your hands out and your shoulders a little because that's kind of confining.
I know. Oh, stiff.
Right. Exactly what we're talking about. We're going to put it, you can choose which way you want to do this, but basically we're going to put it on our lap and then we're going to tie the ends underneath the chair and constrain your body. So you can, grab the other ends and, underneath the chair and bring it up and through on the other side, whatever works for you. So that basically you've trapped your legs underneath this sweatshirt. So you can't really get out because the sweatshirt's constraining you. Okay, so again, you're going to try to get out of the chair, either by using your thighs or by actually trying to stand up with the resistance of this sweatshirt. Spend a few minutes to feel what that's like.
One.
Good. And then when you find something that works for you, make those 2 defined movements. And those will be 5 and 6 in our phrase. So 5, 6. Repeating again. 5, 6. Excellent. So take the sweatshirt and put it away from you. And we're going to make a phrase out of those three different experiences. So we start with our head, which would be 1 and 2. And then the next move, which was when we have the switch it around our waist, 3, 4. And this time around our thighs, 5, 6. Good. So using what we call it 2 counts for each movement, the 1, 2, 2, 2, 3, 2, we're going to go through all 6 movements. Ready, and 1, 2, 2, 2, 3, 2, 4, 2, 5, 2, 6, 2. Great. So hang on to that phrase because we're going to come back and use it again later. But that is the end of our first exercise.
Yeah.
Okay. So hi, everybody. We're now going to move into the third experience, which is creating constriction through movement sentences. And a movement sentence is a way to create some dance vocabulary so that you can pull from a text and have a real physical experience of what the author is trying to say. And you can actually create words straight from the text, take verbs and action words to make this movement possible. So we pulled 4 words. The first is crawl, the second is squirm, the third is grip, and the fourth is crumble. And they are actually traveling words, which where you would physically move, and then what we call non-traveling, so you'd be moving but not across the floor, and then a sinking word, and then a freezing word. So it's a way for us to kind of experience this notion of constriction. So we're going to now practice these words. And
Linda, just a quick question. So you chose those 4 words, like the stopping and everything, sinking, like inspired by the text?
Yes. So the 4 different categories of action words. The first is a traveling action word, which could be something like run or walk. And in our case, we chose crawl.
Sure.
The second is a non-traveling word. So you would be moving. Maybe you're doing contraction or you're gripping, squirming in some way. Sorry, you wouldn't be gripping. You'd be squirming or you'd be wriggling. Things where you wouldn't necessarily be moving from one place to another. That's your non-traveling word. And we chose squirm. And then grip, which is a stopping action. So you could freeze, that's another one. But for us, we thought grip was much more, that was more closely aligned to the text. And then the fourth word is a sinking word, physically sinking. So it could be like you're just melting, but in our case, we use the word collapse. So they came from the text, but they were based on 4 different categories.
Got it. Thank you.
No problem. Okay, so we're going to work on crawl. So the idea here is that you're going to create movement that comes out of crawl. Now you can get on your hands and knees. You can also do this as a crawl that you feel in your body in a different way. So we always encourage you to use different body parts. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to play with the word crawl. Okay, here we go. So this is a traveling word. So you're moving in some way. Right. So find it in your body. It can start out as a crawl on your hands and knees. You maybe then want to be standing up or moving sidling along with your hip, whatever works for you. Until you find something that works in your body. I feel more something along with crawling along with my elbows. And I see Paloma and Georgina find different things here. Great. Once you've found one movement that works, repeat it so that you have it. And it's just one movement in the phrase. So that's your crawl. And just repeat it so you have it. Great. So from there, we're going to just shake it out for a sec. And now you're going to try to find squirm. So where is squirm for you? Where was squirm? Squirm can just be a hand or it can just be your head. Find squirm. And it was an intentional choice. There's an uncomfortableness around that word squirm. So once you found that in your body, find that repetitive movement and find one movement for squirm here and just repeat it. So let's add that on to crawl. So we're going to do one move for crawl, and one move for squirm. Good. Now we're going to move on to grip. So find grip. It can be a hand. It can be your whole body, experiencing grip, whatever it is. Yeah, good. Great. So once you found that, let's go back and add crawl, squirm, grip. Try it once or twice, make sure you have it. Yeah. Good. Okay, last word is collapse, right?
Yeah.
Great. So collapse can, again, be something as small as a wrist collapse, right? It doesn't have to be sinking to the ground. So find something that speaks to you regarding the word collapse. Yeah, good. All right, let's try to put all four movements together now into our movement sentence. Here we go. So we're going to crawl, squirm, grip, collapse. Let's repeat it. Crawl, squirm, grip, collapse. Good. Okay, so we've now created our movement sentence. So now we're going to take everything and put it together and see what we come up with. Seven, eight. I'll give you a 4 count introduction, and then we'll start with the head first. 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 1, 2. The chest, 1, 2. Good. 1, 2. Thighs, 1, 2. 1, 2. Now zoom. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Great. Move to the first place, 2. Second place, 2. Third place, 2. Fourth place, 2. First place, 2. Second place, 2. Third place, 2. Fourth place, 2. Crawl, 2, 3, 4. Squirm, 2, 3, 4. Grip, 2, 3, 4. Collapse, 2, 3, 4. Again, crawl, 2, 3, 4. Squirm, 2, 3, 4. Grip, 2, 3, 4. Collapse, 2, 3, 4. Okay, here we go. 5, 6, 7, go. And head 2, head 2, and chest 2, chest 2, and legs 2, legs 2. And to the camera, 2, 3, 4, and 5, 6, 7, 8. And you're going to go to your first place 2, and your first place 2, and your second place 2, and your third place 2, and your fourth place 2, and your first place 2, your second place 2, your third place 2, and your fourth place 2. And now you're going to crawl 2, 3, 4, and squirm 2, 3, 4, and grip 2, 3, 4, and collapse 2, 3, 4. Repeat, crawl 2, 3, 4, and squirm 2, 3, 4, and grip 2, 3, 4, and collapse 2, 3, 4. Okay, here we go. And 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And place 2, place 2, place 2, place 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. Squirm 2, 3, 4. Grip 2, 3, 4. Collapse 2, 3. Repeat. Crawl 2, 3, 4. Squirm 2, 3, 4. Grip 2, 3, 4. Collapse 2, 3, 4.
Okie dokie. Now that you've seen the 3 exercises, the 3 movements we did, and then the kind of choreography movement sequence that we all made afterwards, I'll just share with you a few concluding thoughts and my deepest thanks to Linda and Paloma, who were so wonderful to work with. And we had a blast. I think we cut out all the laughing, but there was tons of laughing. So as I said, what inspired this collaboration was a desire to have my students move more deeply into the experience of Nafisi and her students like Sanaz, who every time they walked out the door into public had to constrain their bodies and be very controlled, right? And they were sort of trapped in this place where their bodies were considered sort of an enemy, right? The kind of criminalization of women's bodies. I think especially, we were teaching at a girls' school at the time. The girls talk a lot about, and then sometimes they don't talk about, their experiences walking down the streets of New York. And if your students, all your students, but your female students in particular, don't talk very much about that, you might consider it in an advisory capacity of some kind, or a casual conversation or something, asking them about it. The experience of getting catcalled is a daily part of students' lives, and I think that's interesting as well to reflect on for what kind of constriction or what kind of performance that evokes from students in 2020 2021 in the United States or in New York City where they walk around. Yeah, so we hope to deepen empathy, feelings not just in your mind but in your body. Let me present this so that it's nice and big and pretty looking. I hope you didn't see anything weird on my desktop. I also want to emphasize again that doing this kind of activity can have more and different students feeling successful, and some students who perhaps are always a little too comfortable, feeling a little bit uncomfortable, and trying something new, which is something we should often be pushing our students to do. And you can show them this video and tell them that I'd never done any choreography before, and use it as an example. Because for me, it was like, I mean, it was kind of uncomfortable, but it was definitely something new. And you just kind of go with it. It's low stakes. Who cares? It also is another way to explore the experience of remote learning. We are so constrained right now in our spaces, and whether that what kind of place that you're sort of doing lockdown in, whether you have a little yard or a garden, or you can go for long walks, or you can't. I think that we need to give our students outlets for the physical experience of not just being trapped at home, but also the physical experience of being trapped in these little screens. And that felt to me really liberating to address that through motion, right? And to let the frustration out a little bit, because we live in frustrating times for so many reasons. One of the reasons is that because we're stuck on Zoom all the time. It's also an opportunity for low stakes artistic experimentation. Perhaps lots of artistic experimentation when you're young should be low stakes, but it's creating something in response to what you read. And I think that sometimes we'll do it with a collage, or draw something, or write a little story, or write a poem. But we can also make dances, and look for other ways to engage with the material. And it's in that creating that the students deepen their understanding of even the basics, right? So you might think, oh, I'm asking them to choreograph a dance about something. That sounds really high level, and it is. But in doing that, in breaking down the messages of the text in order to create the choreography, they will in turn deepen their understanding of the text. They will figure out the meanings of words that they didn't know about, and they will come away with more skills than they had before. All right, so that is that for Linda and my lesson on carelessness to constriction, and how to use dance for the sake of reading comprehension, or perhaps reading comprehension for the sake of dance. And now I'm going to just share with you one other passage from reading Lolita and Tehran, because in preparing this, I reread the whole thing, and I got really into it, and I wanted to share this question with you as well. So you can consider it a bonus, or you can stop the video. No one's holding you. No one's making you listen. So the question of carelessness, I think, is really cool. I think you should try to talk to your kids about your students, the young people you work with, as much as possible about carelessness, because it can be anything. It can be like Bernie Sanders' hair. Why does he get to be so careless with his appearance when so many female politicians, no matter what their age, can't be? Bernie Sanders' mittens versus Nancy Pelosi's heels. But at the same time, you can also. It's not always good to be able to be careless, right? Sometimes being really put together is a source of power too. But this comes up a lot with students, I think, especially in the power dynamics in the classroom that are often revolving in complex ways around class and race. And I think that it comes up a lot. Who gets to be careless in your classrooms, in your schools, because they feel like they can just do whatever they want, and they feel very much so like they belong? And who doesn't? Who do you think, oh, she has to be very careful? Or you might even think that it's her personality to be shy or reserved, or his personality to be shy or reserved. But maybe it's not. Maybe if they could be a little bit freer with themselves, if they felt less constricted, that they would feel a little bit differently. Okay. So that's kind of carelessness on a day-to-day level. But when does carelessness become cruelty? And this is a great passage if if you get anything from this thing other than Linda's amazing choreography, it's that reading Lolita in Tehran is a great book to read with high schoolers. So not the least because it gives you an opportunity to discuss the book Lolita with them, and maybe that's something that teenagers need to hear about. The objectification of young girls, really young girls, is. I was in an all-girls school when we were teaching it, so it was very much so of that. Of the side of like they were discussing moments when they'd felt objectified or things that they saw in society, but I think if you taught it in a co-ed environment or even with boys, you could also have young men thinking more critically about how they look at women and how women look at them. Boys can be objectified too, of course. And I think actually the objectification and dehumanization that is illustrated in this passage is something that everyone feels at different moments in their lives. You can feel like a moth or a butterfly pinned up to a frame. And I think that that's something that all students, perhaps especially American students, when so many things are on display and we turn kids into trophies so often. It's something that comes up a lot. And here I am, talking a lot about a passage rather than just letting you feel it. So I'm going to start reading. This is on page 35. I have asked you to imagine us in the act of reading Lolita in Tehran, a novel about a man who, in order to possess and captivate a 12-year-old girl, indirectly causes the death of her mother, Charlotte, and keeps her as his little entrapped mistress for 2 years. Are you bewildered? Why Lolita? Why Lolita in Tehran? I want to emphasize once more that we were not Lolita. The Ayatollah was not Humbert, and this republic was not what Humbert called his princedom by the sea. Lolita was not a critique of the Islamic Republic, but it went against the grain of all totalitarian perspectives. Let us go to the part where Humbert arrives at Lolita's summer camp to pick her up after her mother's death, of which she knows nothing. This scene is the prelude to 2 years of captivity, during which the unwitting Lolita drifts from one motel to another with her guardian lover. This is quotation. Let me retain for a moment that scene with all its trivial and fateful detail. Hag Holmes writing out a receipt, scratching her head, pulling a drawer out of her desk, pouring change onto my impatient palm, then neatly spreading a banknote over it with a bright and 5 photographs of girl children, some gaudy moth or butterfly still alive, safely pinned to the wall, nature study, the framed diploma of the camp's dietitian, my trembling hands, a card produced by efficient Holmes with a report of Dolly Hayes' behavior for July, fair to good, keen on swimming and boating, a sound of trees and birds and my pounding heart. I was standing with my back to the open door, and then I felt the blood rush to my head as I heard her respiration and voice behind me. Although this is not one of the more spectacular scenes in Lolita, it demonstrates Nabokov's skill, and I believe it is at the heart of the novel. Nabokov called himself a painterly writer. This scene gives a good indication of what he meant. The description is pregnant with the tension between what has gone on before, Charlotte's discovery of Humbert's treachery, and their confrontation leading to Charlotte's fatal accident, and the knowledge of more terrible things to come. Through the juxtaposition of insignificant objects, a framed diploma, a photograph of girl children, ordinary transactions, fair to good, keen on swimming and boating, with personal feelings and emotions, my impatient palm, my trembling hands, my pounding heart. Nabokov foreshadows Humbert's terrible deeds and Lolita's orphaned future. Ordinary objects in this seemingly descriptive scene are destabilized by emotions, revealing Humbert's guilty secret. From now on, Humbert's shiver and tremble will color every nuance of his narrative, imposing emotion onto landscape, time, and incident, however seemingly marginal or insignificant. Did you, like my girls, feel that the evil implied in Humbert's actions and emotions is all the more terrifying because he parades as a normal father, a normal husband, and a normal human being? Then there is the butterfly. Or is it a moth? Humbert's inability to differentiate between the two, his indifference, implies a moral carelessness in other matters. This blind indifference echoes his calloused attitudes towards Charlotte's dead son and Lolita's nightly sobs. Those who tell us Lolita is a little vixen who deserved what she got should remember her nightly sobs in the arms of her rapist and jailer. Because, you see, as Humbert reminds us, with a mixture of relish and pathos, she had absolutely nowhere else to go. I'm going to skip ahead a little bit. Keep focusing on that moth butterfly. When I think of Lolita, I think of that half-alive butterfly pinned to the wall. The butterfly is not an obvious symbol, but it does suggest that Humbert fixes Lolita in the same manner that butterfly is fixed. He wants her, a living, breathing human being, to become stationary, to give up her life for the still life he offers her in return. Lolita's image is forever associated in the minds of her readers with that of her jailer. Lolita on her own has no meaning. She can only come to life through her prison bars. This is how I read Lolita. Again and again, as we discussed Lolita in that class, our discussions were colored by my students' hidden personal sorrows and joys. Like tear stains on a letter, these forays into the hidden and personal shaded all our discussions of Nabokov. And more, I thought of that butterfly that linked us so closely. What linked us so closely was this perverse intimacy of victim and jailer. Now, I would love to see a choreography based on that passage. Thank you for listening.